Okay, the other thing we're going to cover tonight is going to be the details on the hands and feet. And like I said, we're going to work on details of the face next week. And then I'm going to give you a longer period of time to try to put this all together. Okay, remember when we talked about the hands, if my hand was essentially facing you, we talked about merging the wrist with essentially a mitten shape, putting a cone on it, and then again, if my hands are out like this, the thumb is on the inside, the thumb would be a separate shape.
Dan, when you do that, when you demonstrate how your hand looks, could you put it actually next to the drawing? There you go. Thank you. Good.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, next week you're going to hear a lot about the law of thirds. It's been called the golden mean, the golden rule, pi. It's anything that's roughly a third or 3 to 1. And the idea behind this is there's a lot of aspects of figure drawing where this ratio of 3 to 1, you can use it as a marker for delineating certain things under ideal conditions, again with no foreshortening and so forth and so on that we talked about last week. Okay, the idea is, I want to build some details on the hands, is that this law of thirds applies to, at least when my hand, you're looking at my hand from the outside of the knuckles, every time I go through again, I'd have a series of knuckles. I'd have the middle finger, then I'd have the index finger, I'd have the ring finger, and the ring finger usually is a little bit smaller than, or about the same size as the index. In some people, it's actually longer. And there's old wives' tales about why it's longer, and then there's the pinky, which is the shortest one. Now, from the knuckle, if you look at from the first series of knuckles on my hands to the next series, what I'm going to show you is that each time you go to a knuckle, it's basically smaller by about a factor of a third. So you look at my finger, there's 1, 2, there's 3 joints. So I'm going through 1, 2, 3 knuckles. Okay, so and every time I go through a knuckle, if this were 1, the next break point would be 2/3, and then the final break point would be 1/3. Now, the thumb, believe it or not, has the same 3 joints in it. If you start at the base of the thumb, again, this distance, if this were 1, this would be 2/3 and this would be 1/3. So every time I go through a different break point in the thumb, even though it's a different joint compared to the fingers, it has a different structure, the breakdown is still roughly, it's a third less every time I go through a joint. And again, if I start at the base of the thumb, 1, this would be 1 unit, 2, and then it would be 3. And again, the hand overlaps with the forearm. And you notice my wrist bone is more pronounced on the outside, so I see a bigger bump out here than on the inside. Okay. If I actually have my hand facing you, it's an entirely different story. Okay. What happens when my hand is facing you, and I'm dominated by the thumb and my palm, actually the spacing between the joints of the finger are equal, they're not a third. So if my hand is facing you, again, I'd start out with essentially a ball shape. I would add some fingers onto it. My hand would flip over, now my thumb would be on the outside. And again, it would be the palm area, it would be controlled by the thumb in the palm area. And like I said, the breakdown of the fingers, I could draw just equal spacing for essentially the joints of the fingers. And that's from the front. Now this only, again, works for the ideal case. The minute I move my hand in any direction, you're going to get foreshortened. So everything, I'm giving you just a rule of thumb here, so you can just roughly get things placed close to where they should be initially. But then you have to take into account foreshortening, so nothing is ever going to be ideal unless my hand is, I'm actually sticking my hand right at you, it's right at eye level, and you're actually seeing, that would be the ideal case. Now for the feet, we've sort of covered that in the past. Remember I keep saying from the front, if I start with the upper leg, I got the knee sort of shaped like a tiny skull. And then I go into the calf. Remember, the outside of the calf is higher than the inside. And then the ankles are in the opposite direction. And then from the front, I keep saying the foot looks like a horse's hoof. So I put in this sort of this half-ellipse shape, and then I could break it down. Because the foot from the front is being severely foreshortened, what you're really going to see is my big toes and my little toes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the foot's done. Okay? Now, from the side, that's the easiest position. Let's look at from the side, from the outside. Thigh, knee, I go into the calf. Again, I shape up it down as a triangle, and then I can break it down. I basically connect the ankle bone, I have the ankle bone connecting the foot, I go for the heel, pad, and then if this were the outside of the foot, I'd actually see the small toe first, and I'd see a hint of the big toe and the other toes, and the foot's done. If I'm looking at this from the inside, essentially, now this would be the outside of my right leg. If this were the inside of my left leg, remember my big toes are on the inside, not on the outside. So if I was looking at this other leg from the inside, instead of the small toe being here, I'd have the big toe. And the small toes would be in back. Okay, so that's from the side. The last case is from the back. From the back, you see the back, you see the buttock, you see the back of my thigh, and again, I'd overlap the calf. Remember, the outside still is higher than the inside from the back. Ankles go in the opposite direction. But now, I could actually put in almost an equilateral triangle for the foot. And why I'm doing that is because I have the Achilles tendon connecting the heel, and I usually would just see a hint of the front of the foot severely foreshortened. And again, if this were the inside, I'd see the big toe. So the key is to put in that little triangle and then modify it with the heel and the Achilles tendon. Okay, so that's basically one other possible case that I probably should cover for the hands would be from the side. Suppose I'm doing this. It's from the side. Just remember puppet figures, shadow figures where you're making Kugel Friend and Ollie, and one, I guess Ollie was the alligator. Okay, that's what my hand looks like from the side. So from the side, again, I'd have the forearm going into again, the hand would be a shape, sort of semi-triangular shape. And again, if from the outside, I would just see my small finger and then my palm. If it were from the inside, basically, if I was looking at it from the inside, I'd also, now I have the thumb, essentially have to put the thumb in. So again, it's sort of a triangular shape that looks essentially like that from the side. But again, it only holds if I'm holding my hand perfectly at eye level and there's no foreshortening. Okay, Nick.